Howdy folks, Jamboree here, and joining me is Curt Headley from the podcast Film Focus. How are you, Curt?
Not too bad. How are you, sir?
I'm pretty good. Pretty damn good, actually. I'm appreciating that I have a heater in my room now. It's very chilly in England.
I totally understand. I mean, winter times are always difficult, and heating is a joyful feeling.
It's amazing. It's always a treat. So what we'll be discussing is the first 3 episodes of the MCU TV show Wandavision, which is currently available on Disney+. How would you describe this show? Because it's very strange, and it's like you can't sum it up simply.
No. And the tricky thing is, with WandaVision, it's one of those sort of shows that you can watch without having seen all of the rest of the films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but at the same time, having that prior knowledge of all those films sort of really helps inform your viewing experience of this show. The best way for me to describe it is, imagine a couple, one who has, well, both of them have superpowers, but one of them is a robot and one of them is a lady who can move things with her mind. And they happen to be in a interesting sort of city where they're in a sitcom, and within each episode the sitcom style changes, and it's just about them going through their daily lives. And there's a lot of fun hijinks and strange things going on, but there's this ominous feeling that something isn't quite right. And as the show progresses, those sort of mysterious elements start to come into play as the story progresses, essentially.
Yeah, so to give a bit more context, it's about Wanda and Vision from the MCU living together in a sitcom. But at the same time, there's something weird happening, and the decade will change every episode.
It's a beautiful concept.
It is. In premise, it's very interesting, and it does remind me of Pleasantville. Have you seen Pleasantville?
You know what? That's been on my list for so long, but I've heard so many people talking about it. I pretty much have a basic idea of what it is.
It is very much like this, except if Wanda and Vision were just regular people and from the future. It's kind of similar. It's got the same kind of feel, but at the same time, I think the MCU context makes it unique. When you throw that in, that definitely makes it kind of are you enjoying the show so far?
Oh yeah, very much so. I have been looking forward to this show since the time it was announced, mainly because of all of the Marvel projects that was announced for Phase 4, in the super early phase. This one had the most unique elements because Wanda and Vision are 2 very cool and interesting characters, especially together. And if you know of their comic book history, the potential for this show was high. So far, I'm glad to see that it's fun, unique, strange, and funny, and I'm having a blast with it. It's fun.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing about it, is that it's fun. It's entertaining, and it stands out compared to other MCU products because it's going for its own thing. And it's
definitely.
Yeah, I know some people that are used to the formula for the MCU might be disappointed. They might be going into this expecting lots of action and a big scale kind of stories. Not yet. I don't think it's going to get to that yet. I think that it's all about the mystery building at this point. For me, I think this has so many aspects that I love from the usual kind of shows that I enjoy. Like the horror, the mystery, the slice of life, comedy, and supernatural fantasy. Those at the top of my interests are probably right there. So that's what's keeping me engaged. And what I also like is that I get very invested in the sitcom plots, and that so much so that I forget that okay, there's something weird going on. But then when something strange happens, I'm like, oh yeah. It's a really surreal feeling that I don't think any other show that I've seen has given me before, where it kind of weaves between those 2 kinds of moods. I feel like the best way to describe the show in general, is just uncomfortably charming.
Yeah, that is a really solid way to look at it. especially from the first episode. Watching like the way in which everything unfolds is very fun, very pleasant. Everything's sort of going on this sort of steady ship, but then you run into like, I guess, a mini iceberg, and things just start to get off, and you're just like, oh yeah, and like, oh no. So there's a lot of really nice moments like that which just break the, I guess, illusion of what's happening. And I find it fascinating, and this show leaves you with more questions than answers, but it's not in that sense where you feel like you're not getting your, like, you know, best way to describe it.
I'd say it's like it's drip feeding information.
There you go.
And I think that's the best way to carry off a mystery. Like, nothing ever seems on the nose, but there's also stuff there where you kind of get a small idea of what might be happening.
Damn it, why? Why did you...
Oh, Arthur, stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
And I'm always just theorizing about like what comes next. And I think because it's in a weekly format, I enjoy that, you know, that speculation and build up between weeks, because obviously there's a lot of shows out there now that do the whole binge format. And while I used to enjoy doing that about 4 or 5 years ago, I'm not as invested in binging shows as much as I used to. And I do like that sort of break where, okay, this is one episode, it's done, marinate on it, and then when the next one comes around, it's just like, oh, okay, maybe, you know what, I'll recap the last one and then go back in.
So would you say that the first episode is your favorite so far?
I would actually say the second episode is my favorite, because the first episode presented an interesting idea as to what might be going on, but then the second episode presented just a few more hints of what might be happening, and there was just a little bit more of an ominous tone and certain moments where I was just like, you know, I had a few raised eyebrows. I'm like, could it be this, could it be that? And I think I just like the plot of the second episode more. The humor in the second episode is bloody wonderful.
Oh yes, absolutely. That's something I was going to ask you, actually.
Yeah.
This is a sitcom first, so how often did you laugh though? Because the show, it's strange because like it's got a sitcom formula, but it's not designed to be like a modern comedy. It's not intentionally trying to make us laugh constantly. It's weird, but like, but at the same time, there are funny moments. How often did you laugh?
I would say it was sporadic and minimal, mainly because I'm already a very fickle person when it comes to humor. Whenever I see anything with a comedy-based format, I prefer it when comedy isn't the focus. Like, unless it's Edgar Wright, there's a handful of things that will ever make me laugh. But with this show, there's a few throwaway lines, or just the odd line from like some of the secondary cast or certain cameos that show up, and I'm just like, oh wow, this is nice, this is delightful. And it's more just the small moments that, you know, get me to chuckle, where I'm just like, oh, this is great. Mostly to do with Vision bumbling around. He's great.
That's the thing, is that it didn't make me laugh that often, but not to the point where I was like groaning. Because even when I wasn't laughing, I was still just charmed. Because there's this innocence to everything that is just so adorable that you kind of forget that it's supposed to be a sitcom, and you just become endeared by this goofy couple trying to fit into society.
Yeah, no doubt. And is like you said, it's innocent and it feels true to the source material that they're emulating. Now, I haven't seen too many like sitcoms over the years, but the amount that I have seen, whenever I went to my grandparents' house or was forced to watch them at a family member's house, I've seen so many of these quirks and elements for years, and the way in which they were able to capture the spirit of those so well, from the intros with the quirky music to some of the pitch perfect situations, especially that first episode.
Oh yeah.
I loved it. I was just like, I'm getting flashbacks of this, that, and that, and it is literally hitting all those points so well.
It's so nostalgic, and like, yeah, this has been done before. Like, people have parodied old sitcoms before many times, but I think what makes this one so special is the budget they have to work with and how well they can replicate these things. Because, like, yeah, it's one thing to just make things black and white or add a bit of a 70s filter, but it's the makeup, the costumes, the set design, and the way it's shot. Every little detail, like, and they don't go the extra mile and like change the sound or anything, but I think that's what adds to the weirdness as well. It kind of like makes you go like, hey, hang on, the sound is normal, so this might be something.
Yeah, it's like every so often there's certain moments where you're hearing the way maybe dialogue is spoken, or some of the sound that's happening in between, whether it be like the music or like certain sound effects, and you're just like, every so often you'll just remember like, oh, this was made in modern times. There were certain elements that, you know, weren't created one for one, but again, since they're emulating something that came from the past, but still incorporating this sort of weird otherworldly element to it, it just works, and it coalesces in this nice like cohesive thing. It's just really nice.
Yeah, the aesthetics of the show, even though they change every episode, it is one of the major appeals of it.
Yeah,
and you're always kind of curious, like, oh, what's the next one gonna look like?
yeah
It's really exciting, and especially when at the end of each episode it transitions into what it'll be next, so then it gets you even more excited, like, ooh, so that's the next decade. How are they gonna pull it off? Do you think that the chemistry between Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen is carrying the show?
Oh, 100%. They have been one of my favorite pairings since Civil War. Captain America Civil War came out in 2016, but I always felt that their relationship needed a little bit more time to build. The only reason I loved it in the films was because I was more attached to the source material, so I knew where they were coming from in terms of what the filmmaker's intent was. But with this show, it allows them to be, you know, 100% on screen together almost all the time. We get to see the quirks of their relationship, the back and forth, their variations, but like their similarities, and they play off of each other so well. You can tell that they care and love each other. Their chemistry is literally electric. And
it is, yeah.
Again, I go back to that second episode. Seeing those guys work together, especially during that one event that they're doing, it was bloody wonderful.
Yes, what Kurt is referring to is that there is... It's probably the best part of the series so far, but like... Okay, so Vision has ended up having chewing gum, and he gets stuck inside his gears, and he becomes drunk exactly when he has to do a magic show with Wanda live in front of an audience, and it's just hilarious. It's just Vision drunk trying to do a magic act, and then Wanda trying to hide the fact that he is accidentally performing his superpowers in order to do these things. And yeah, it's just great. That's the most I laughed and the most fun I had out of the show so far, I'd say.
Is this your car?
No.
I beg to differ. Really? Is this your car?
Vision.
Is this your car? Is this your car? Is this your car? Is this your car? Is this your car?
Yeah, and Paul Bettany, like, I've always liked him, especially after he joined the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I've never seen him in so much of a humorous role. The dude does comedy so well.
Oh, damn well, yeah.
I was having the best time just watching this guy go. I'm like, please more of this. Please more of this for the rest of my life, please. I think, was it my favorite part of that was the scene with the piano. And I'm just like, that was great. And that one guy's response, I'm just like, oh, you poor man.
That was a great punchline.
Yeah, that was great.
Illusion. Illusion.
Yeah.
Master of Enigma. Allow me.
What?
weren't supposed to see how we did that trick.
That was my grandmother's piano.
What I like about Paul
Yes, sir.
Bettany's comedic acting is that he's able to do the goofy and the dry wit. He bounces between them both, depending on what's required. But at the same time, Elizabeth Olsen is really good at capturing the spirit of whatever kind of trope that a lead female character would be in a sitcom. And because she's so good at that, it makes the comedy work even more.
Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely.
So, who is your favourite supporting character so far?
Ooh, tough.
Because, like, for those who don't know, there's all these neighborhood characters
Yeah.
that they'll interact with.
I would probably say Geraldine at the moment, just
Same.
because, especially what happens with her in the latest episode.
Yeah.
I just like how she just appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And she has this interesting relationship with Wanda. I just like her response to things, and she just seems very preppy, fun, and her and Wanda bounce off of each other really well. They have this interesting relationship, and I just think she's fun.
Wanda, what's up? It's 75 degrees out. You making a fashion statement?
Well, hi, Geraldine. You know, now's not really a good time.
No. It's Foxy. You'll have to let me borrow it sometime. But first, I gotta borrow a bucket.
The only other person that I would highlight more, or maybe just about the same, would be Catherine Hahn's character, whose name I forgot in the show itself. I think it's Agnes.
Agnes, yeah, she's good too, yeah.
I love Catherine Hahn. She's one of my favorite people in the history of existence. She has such a wit. Her comedic timing is fantastic. And I just love her smile. She is infectious every time she's on screen. And this may be partly me just projecting my love for her from Parks and Recreation, but she is just wonderful. Anytime she shows up in anything, good times. And the same is true for this show.
I was just reading a Crackerjack magazine article called How to Treat Your Husband to Keep Your Husband. And let me tell you, what Ralph could really use is how to goose your wife so you don't lose your wife.
Okay, so what I like about Geraldine is that once the twist is revealed that she's from the future, it makes complete sense. Because you can tell she's got a very modern sense of humour, and she's much more chatty compared to everyone else, because everyone else is putting on a mask or trying to be too polite. So yeah, it adds up. And what I like about Agnes is, again, I think it's the same reason why I like Geraldine. She's far bubblier than everyone else, but at the same time, she's trying to hide something.
Oh, yes. Again, with that latest episode, I feel like the last two episodes really have started to build up this fact that there is clearly an illusion going on, and that certain people are aware of what's going on and want to try and keep a lid on it. And I'm just like, ooh, gosh, I need to know what's happening now. Like, every, ending point of like a new episode just leaves me itching to know what's going on, and the speculation just rises.
So what do you think? If you were to be a writer for the next bunch of episodes, what do you think is going on?
Oh, fantastic. Is it give the writing, ideas to someone that's not very good at that at all. To be honest, right now, my thoughts are that Westview, at least I believe that's the name of the town that they exist in right now, is a real place, but Wanda's sort of created this sort of world within the area and has trapped a certain amount of people within it. So they've probably had their minds worked with to, exist within this world, but clearly whenever Wanda's feeling anxious or not quite herself, I think that breaks her concentration and creates these oddities that sort of exist within the world. Clearly there's going to be some sort of breaking point or explosion of something going down later on in the series. I'm just waiting to see what happens, but I guess that's my best bet. I don't tend to speculate too deep just because I don't like to be proven right about anything.
Even more humiliating to find you've been proven wrong.
Oh, yes.
I do know that there are theories that this is being tied to Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange movie.
Yes.
Forgot what it's called, Multiverses of Madness or something like that.
Yeah, the Multiverse of Madness, yeah.
Yeah. I know it's building to that, and I know that it's been revealed that Wanda's going to be in that. So this is definitely a build-up to that.
And I'm very curious to see how much different dimensions and realities will play into it, because Doctor Strange really opened up the window of possibilities for touching on those otherworldly, crazier concepts. But we only just got a tiny window into that. And there's certain elements of the Ant-Man films that sort of alluded to, you know, the more fantastical elements. But this, if handled correctly, could literally blow off the doors into some next level filth. And I'm all the more for it.
Well, you bring up Ant-Man, and that's the thing. Ant-Man and the Wasp is probably my favourite MCU film because it just goes into like so many different weird places that the other MCU films don't do. And I guess you could even use that as a template for this show and Multiverse of Madness.
Oh yeah, definitely. I have liked how slowly but surely the MCU is sort of sprinkled in these minor elements that have slowly gotten bigger in different shapes and forms. And now with this television format, they have an interesting opportunity to, you know, grab people in the TV world and then transition them into the film universe, where depending on how far-reaching the effects of this show are, and then what happens in Doctor Strange, you know, number 2, we could get some really crazy stuff.
Oh, it's so exciting!
I know. I mean, I've only read a handful of like some of this comic book material, but knowing what's part of like the source material that I've actually, knowing that what's part of the source material so far, good gravy. Oh, the possibilities are so there, and I'm all for it, man. Just give me the weird stuff. I'm ready.
See, I as someone that's not even read the comics, I'm excited, and I think that's mainly because I don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell am I in for? You were talking about how they're using TV shows to bring people into this universe, and I think WandaVision, out of all the things they've announced for Disney Plus TV shows, this fits the format the most.
Absolutely.
You can't do this. You could not have done WandaVision as a film. It would have. It just fits TV so well, and like it belongs where it is at the moment.
Yeah, and I remember there was a time many moons ago where the idea of putting anything superhero based on television was scoffed at, just because there was budgetary like concerns. People were saying that you probably wouldn't be able to get any proper good actors on it, and just you wouldn't have the right kind of creative team to be able to bring that kind of stuff to life. But there has definitely been a shift in the last 10 years as we've seen very talented people, whether they come from film or just have appeared out of nowhere in the realm of television, and have really started to take on these projects and put in the effort. And even with time constraints or budgetary issues, they've still been able to turn out really great stuff. And the tide has turned to the point where sometimes people are even more willing to see a television-based format just because it's longer, there's more time to tell the stories, and if you can cut around certain visual effects and budget-based things, you can turn some crazy stuff in. So I think WandaVision, alongside a lot of other upcoming properties, will again help turn the tide in terms of what kind of content we'll be able to get on streaming platforms.
Definitely. I do want to know this though. Which decade are you most excited about in WandaVision?
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna be basic and just say the 90s, because the 90s was the era that I grew up in. So many of those sitcoms in some way, shape or form, whether it was reruns or stuff that aired within that decade, I'm just fully aware of. So I want to know what that's going to be like. You know, whether we're talking about like, you know, Roseanne, or we're talking about Seinfeld, or Friends, or The Fresh Prince. Like, you know, there's obviously varied like versions of sitcoms that came out within that decade, but I've pretty much seen at least one of everything that ever existed. So I'm very curious to see what they're going to draw from there. But also I'm very curious about the costume design because yo man, like while obviously I'm not American, some of that clothing design did translate over here as well. So I'm like, what are you guys going to be wearing? What's the
tie-dye shirts?
Like? I need to know.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. And that's the thing. It's not just the fact that they'll be parodying and referencing 90s sitcoms, but also the culture too. And even though I already find a lot of the show to be nostalgic, the 90s is going to be the most nostalgic. And I want to see VHS tapes. I want to see I want to see NSYNC posters in the background. I want to see that shit. I want to be taken back to my childhood. I want that. But it will be interesting to see how the humor will change as well. It really will. Because they have been doing that so far. The humor has gradually changed each episode as they change decade.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'm also curious to see what kind of music choices they'll use as well, because with the last episode, there was a pretty notable choice of music. Also, in the first episode, there was a very classic song that was used there as well. So I'm very excited to see if they'll use a particular music choice, whether it be through the radio or if it'll be like, non-diegetic in the background. I'm just like, okay, what do we got here? I want to know.
So
exciting times.
So to wrap this up, would you recommend this show to others?
Absolutely. One of the things that has been brought up many times over the years is the Marvel Cinematic, the MCU formula, essentially. That these films follow a very particular, like, sort of start, middle, and finish. Yeah. And the best thing about Wandavision is probably the most different, bizarre, yet delightful thing that the MCU has done so far. I know that there's a lot of people that have been, apprehensive to get into the show just because it's not got the standard trappings of the MCU, but I say give it a chance. It's so fun, delightful, humorous, and different, but it has that air of mystery that you just want to know what's going on. So I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the attitude you go in with, I think.
Oh yes,
it really does. Because yeah, it might seem cheesy, but there's a point.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it's not legitimately trying to be hilarious.
Yeah.
It is intentionally corny. And that is where the charm comes from, but also what adds to the creepiness as well. If you tried to make it consistently legitimately funny, I don't think the mystery would have worked. And because you'd be constantly thinking, well, okay, why is the humor so modern? It wouldn't add up. So yeah, thank you for joining me for this review of the Wandavision series so far. Yes. Episodes 1 to 3. Is there anything you'd like to plug? I know you'd like to bring up your podcast at least.
Yeah, so firstly, thank you for letting me attend. I would be glad to reappear and talk some more Wandavision with you at some later point. And yes, my podcast is Film Focus. Been operating for almost 5 years now, and it's literally just a podcast where I talk about film in any way, shape, or form, whether it be, your basic film review discussions, but also talking about film scores, talking about certain film franchises, and currently right now I'm working on a series talking about video game adaptations and live action. So the first part of that went out late side of last year, and I'm currently working on the second part, which is pretty big because I'm talking about the films over the course of like 2000 to 2010. So
yeah, that was when they were popping them out, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I may be alive to do that episode. We'll see if I'm still alive at the end of it. Good gravy.
And you're also an artist. Where can people find your art?
Yes, I do art on primarily Instagram. I'm also on ArtStation under the name Hypersonic55, same as my podcast. I mainly specialize in 2D digital work, so if you're ever into anything anime or Sonic based, I'm your guy.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I hope that everyone enjoyed watching our little review. What do you think of the show? Let us know in the comment section below. Cheerio.